This is Cape Breton Report with your host, Jack Columbus. And with sports, Roy Mercer.
In the news tonight, local officials are worried about the growing incidence of Satan worship. And the healthcare strike is having an effect on some Cape Bretoners. Good evening. Signs of Satan worship among young people have surfaced in Cape Breton. The John Howard Society believes parents and teenagers need to be educated about Satanism before there's a tragedy. Jim Gray reports.
Vincent Waterman is the pastor of St. Philip's African Orthodox Church in Whitney Pier. He's alarmed by what he sees as a growing practice of Satanism among young people who live nearby.
Yes, they venture out at night. They're afraid of the light for some reason or other. And so then if you have a cat or dog, or any pet that venture out at night, they will destroy it as a sacrifice.
Satanism, the worship of the devil and all things evil, is the antithesis of Christianity. The practice of Satanism may be on the rise in Cape Breton.
In Satanism, these people are taught to hate themselves, that it's better to be dead than to be alive for some reason or other. And that frightens me.
Diane Lewis works for the John Howard Society, visiting area schools to talk to children about the criminal justice system.
We've had some evidence that there are a number of young people in the Cape Breton area dabbling in satanic cults. Well, a lot of the rituals, they have like a black mass. Some of it is simply getting together and forming an extremely close-knit group which participates in some instances in things like animal sacrifice. I mean, it can get even more dangerous than that, but a lot of what it is are rituals to make the members feel more powerful.
Heavy metal groups like Iron Maiden have long been accused of communicating satanic messages in their songs. These satanic books are displayed at a Sydney bookstore. Owner Iris Curry defends her right to sell them.
We live in a free country. Many of the books that we have, including this one on cults, what parents should know, I believe the information should be there.
The Sydney Police Department doesn't consider the practice of Satanism to be a problem among the area's young people, at least not yet.
Yes, the department is kind of concerned that perhaps all the talk about it would bring a renewed interest. But again, I guess we have to think about the fact that maybe the information should be available to people in different capacities, parents, and so on and so forth.
Diane Lewis of the John Howard Society wants to educate people about Satanism. She's seeking government funding to hold a public information night on the subject to be held in the Sydney area. Jim Gray, CBC News, Sydney.
Police have arrested a man in connection with recent vandalism in Ottawa cemeteries. 28-year-old David McBride of Riverside Drive made a brief appearance in court in Ottawa this morning. He was arrested early today after someone spray-painted satanic symbols at St. Emmanuel's Church and St. Bernard Cemetery. We have more from Margot McDermott.
When the news broke this morning about St. Bernard's, Debbie Sabarin hurried to the cemetery to check on her grandfather's grave.
I was up the first time they did damage, and there was nothing. Now, to find that on there. He's been at peace for 15 years. Why all of a sudden somebody has to disturb his rest?
Gloucester police say the break in the case came early this morning. They've been keeping a close watch on St. Bernard's and other cemeteries since the vandalism started a few months ago.
Approximately 1 o'clock this morning, stepped patrols in Gloucester were successful in apprehending an individual in the fenced-in area here in this cemetery.
Police have charged 28-year-old David McBride of Ottawa with 4 counts of mischief. They relate to gravestones damaged and knocked over at St. Bernard Cemetery and satanic symbols spray-painted on St. Emmanuel's Church in Ottawa last night. The charges are also for damages done here at St. Bernard Cemetery last week when 40 gravestones were damaged. McBride is in custody at the Regional Detention Centre after appearing in court today. He'll be assessed by a psychiatrist and enter a plea in court tomorrow. Last night's damage is just the latest in a series of 18 acts of desecration in graveyards and churches in the region. The Gloucester police are still looking for other people they say must be involved in this vandalism, but they're hoping that today's arrest will show that they're increasing their patrols and will help discourage other damage at local churches and cemeteries. Margot McDermott, CBC News, Ottawa.
While the battle continues to get the goods and services tax through the Senate, the government is now acting as if the tax is in fact legal. So this week, many taxpayers have received notification from Ottawa that they will be getting a GST tax credit. Sheila Gillis, a tax advisor with the accounting firm of Pete, Marwick and Thorne, joined me in the studio today. She explained what this credit is. Many Canadians would have received this notice in the mail this week. Can you tell us what it means for Cape Bretoners, for instance?
Well, this form is a notice of the amount that you can expect to receive for the goods and services tax credit. And that is a credit that is going to replace the federal sales tax credit that was available under the old tax system. Each year when you completed your income tax return, you were eligible for a tax credit of up to $100 per adult, $50 per child, based on your income level. This is to replace the federal sales tax credit, as obviously the goods and services tax will replace the federal sales tax.
So not every taxpayer who filed a return last year will get one of these in the mail?
No. In order to be eligible for the goods and services tax credit, you had to file a green sheet that came with your return last year. And basically, if your family income was over $40,000, you wouldn't qualify. And that's family income, husband, wife, including any payments which may not be taxable, such as social assistance payments or WCB payments. So unless you filed a green sheet last year, you won't get one of these forms.
Okay, if somebody did receive this in the mail or will be getting it in the next little while, what should that individual do with it?
Well, actually, there's nothing to be done with this form. It's just a notification of how much of a credit you will be receiving. And as the letter indicates, you should be receiving a partial payment in December of this year, pending passing of the goods and services tax legislation. Now, as we all know, that's a doubtful event at this time as to the exact timing, so presumably if it's passed before December, you'll receive a payment in December, and if it's still held up with the Senate approval, whenever the payments will be mailed will have to be determined.
So this is merely a notification. There's nothing that the taxpayer has to do. It will come automatically in the mail.
The only thing that you might want to check is the figures that are on this and see if that agrees to your income as filed last year. If the government has made a mistake and said that you are not eligible for a credit when you think you are, there are indications on the back of the forms as to who you should contact if you feel that you were eligible for a credit and you haven't received a payment notice.
Now, is the same amount given to everybody, or does it depend on the level of income?
It depends on the level of income and the actual family status. For example, it's $190 per adult, $100 per child. There's special provisions if people are low income and maintain a home of $100. So it depends on the actual makeup of your family plus your family income. It decreases 5% for income above $24,000. So for a typical family of 4, by the time you reach $36,000 in family income, you will not receive a credit.
And this is all predicated on the passage of the bill. If it doesn't pass, the payment doesn't arrive.
That's right. And presumably then they would go back to the old federal sales tax credit system.
Sheila Gillis, thank you very much.
Thank you, Jack.
Nova Scotia's newest senator came home from Ottawa today. Mike Forrestal was sworn in yesterday after the Queen gave permission for the Prime Minister to increase the size of the Senate. Paul Barr has this report.
Mike Forrestal rode high in the politics of Dartmouth-Halifax East for 23 years. Until the election of 1988, when he lost to Liberal Ron MacDonald by more than 1,000 votes. And although disappointed by the defeat, he wasn't surprised.
They mounted a good campaign.
A disappointment, but he had one consolation. His party, under Brian Mulrooney, won the election. It took almost 2 years for him to get his reward for faithful service. He was appointed this summer to the Veterans Pension Appeal Board in Charlottetown. And in just a few weeks, he got the call to the Senate. Today, when the newly sworn senator and defender of the GST returned from Ottawa, he defended his appointment and the expansion of the Senate.
There because the Prime Minister is very frustrated by Alan McCacken and the procedure he's following. Of course he's frustrated. The House of Commons is frustrated. The elected members of Parliament are frustrated. Of course that's what I'm there for. But I hope I'm there for much more than that.
But on the streets of Dartmouth and Halifax, there's cynicism about the appointment.
I don't know. I think we're doomed. But Mike Forrestal, I just don't think we need him in there right now.
I don't agree with it. I don't think that it's justified.
So why didn't they put some people on welfare rolls there instead of Mike Forrestal? Would have saved the taxpayers some money.
Well, now that he's accepted the seat in the Senate, Forrestal must give up his pension review job. Paul Barr, CBC News, Halifax.
The implications of the hospital workers' strike in Cape Breton are becoming more apparent every day. Doctors aren't able to provide proper care, and patients are being denied access to medical treatment. Yvonne LeBlanc-Smith reports.
The hospital strike in Cape Breton is entering its 8th week, and frustration is beginning to mount. Doctors are unable to perform their normal duties, and they're concerned for their patients. Sydney Community Hospital has the only mammographic machine, and there's at least 10 women in the Sydney area who are waiting to have biopsies performed.
This is quite an agonizing process, waiting to have this biopsy done. Keep in mind that there is about a 20 to 30% incidence in that group of actually having a small cancer there. In the long run, I don't really think it'll affect their outcome, but certainly it is unnecessary mental anguish as far as I'm concerned.
And even when medical tests are ordered, some patients are being denied. This woman tried to get into the Sydney Community Health Centre this morning for blood work. She says she was harassed by the strikers.
They formed a chain and wouldn't let me through, and one woman kind of started heckling me, and I just kind of told her, not very nicely, to leave me alone. And then I walked down farther, and another short, tinier lady came over, and she said, "You're not getting through." And when I tried to step through the line, she pushed me, and I said, "You know, I'm prenatal." I told her that I had to get through, and I don't think it was right to push a prenatal around. What happened if I would have fell and hurt myself badly or done any kind of damage to the baby? Who would be at fault then?
The strike is also taking its toll on the VON. The nurses are busier than ever and are being asked to care for the people who should be in the hospital.
One example would be a stroke victim that is requiring maybe 2 and 3 people to carry out his care, his nursing care, not just his 24-hour care, but just his general nursing care.
The Cape Breton Medical Society says the situation is growing more intolerable each day. It's asking the Ministers of Labour and Health to move immediately to end the strike. Yvonne LeBlanc-Smith, CBC News, Sydney.
Some parents in Amherst got quite a scare last night. 14 children were rushed to hospital after coming into contact with a potentially toxic chemical in a playground. Glenn Deere reports.
The Lions Park in Amherst was off limits today, closed until the police figure out what happened here last night. Children played around barrels left behind by a construction crew. The barrels contained a liquid with the most wonderful smell.
Peppermint.
The barrels which attracted the children are now sealed in these plastic containers. The children were smelling, and some were tasting, oil of wintergreen, a deadly chemical in its pure form. Worried parents set off alarms all over town.
Then we heard the sirens and the fire trucks were coming in. Then they asked us to move to the far side of the park, and we came back up, and then they told us to go to the first side of the park again.
Of course, we didn't know, and the officers at the scene did not know the extent of the contamination, so they played safety first.
14 children were sent to the Amherst Hospital. Blood tests showed some of them had ingested oil of wintergreen.
The substance is highly toxic, but the amount that they were exposed to was absolutely minute. To put it in perspective, they received approximately 1/60th of a toxic dose. That was the maximum reading we obtained on their blood work.
After swallowing charcoal to absorb the wintergreen and a few hours observation, the children were sent home. Fortunately for them, the liquid in the barrels was just about all water, but everyone had good reason to be scared. Last November, a 2-year-old boy in Digby Neck died after drinking oil of wintergreen. A neighbor was using it as a liniment for arthritis. The barrels in Lions Park originally belonged to an Amherst company called Leaf. They used diluted wintergreen as a flavoring in their bubble gum. The barrels went from the plant to the construction crew in the park.
I think it's terrible because the park is full of children all the time, and why anybody would do such a thing, I don't know.
If you use these barrels, you have to absolutely sure that there is no chemicals, remain in the barrels.
Amherst police don't think any laws have been broken, but they're checking with the Environment Department just to make sure. Glenn Deere, CBC News, Amherst.
Coming up on Cape Breton Report, Joan Weeks looks at a special daycare for the physically and mentally handicapped.
middle-class service. Now, which airline are you going to fly? Our world revolves around you.
How long does your breath stay fresh with certs? Long enough to make 33 peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. Long enough to finally tie your first bow tie. Long enough to give Edward a good bath. Or long enough to start something special. Great tasting certs with Retsin. In regular and NutraSweet flavors, including new Winter Mint, for fresh breath that lasts a long, long time.
Eggs, over easily, eggs, come in handily, eggs, very scrambly too. Oh, you just can't beat an EGG. Eggs are naturally good as can be. That's why everybody loves a good egg. Get cracking!
Child and youth care workers from across Canada learned about a serious problem in rural New Brunswick today, sexual abuse of children. And they also learned about an effective way to fight it. 650 delegates are at a week-long conference on child care in Moncton. As Bob Mercereau reports, the focus today was on Charlotte County.
Child care workers knew they had a problem in Charlotte County. Before 1988, 3 or 4 new cases of child sexual abuse were reported each month, but nothing was stopping them. It had some of the worst cases of abuse and incest in the country. Families were reluctant to speak against the abuser, and victims were too frightened. Social services and law enforcement officers admitted they weren't able to help much. Conviction rate was practically zero.
There's no charge that's been laid, there's no treatment going on, nothing's changed, and yet the child has to go back in there and face the music all over again.
So these professionals did an unheard of thing. They got together. Social services, mental health, police, even the provincial court judge. The problems were there were just no models for them to work from for rural areas. They had to construct a system from scratch, learn strong interviewing techniques to help the family and victims talk about what happened, design programs to help the families heal, work with the police to bring the offenders to court. Now in the last 2 years, they've been able to get convictions in 90% of the cases, and the healing process has begun for many.
I think that the degree of success is hopefully great, and it's certainly something far better than has been offered in this province in any other area up until the present time.
They had limited resources and no specific training for the problem of rural abuse, but people in this dedicated group came up with their own solutions. They now feel real social work can be done for these families. Bob Mercereau, CBC News, Moncton.
The Nova Scotia government has decided to pay the Micmacs legal bill for their defense against charges of illegal moose hunting. 14 Micmacs were charged after a moose hunt in Cape Breton in 1988. The case ended after a landmark decision by the Supreme Court of Canada, which upheld Aboriginal rights to hunt and fish for food after the charges were dismissed. The Micmacs' legal bills came to $140,000. Nova Scotia has agreed to reimburse the Indians as a condition in a hunting treaty signed last week. The GST remains stuck in the Senate, and by refusing to return, the Liberals can keep the upper chamber from acting indefinitely. And this morning in the House, opposition leaders renewed their calls for the government to scrap the tax. But the Conservatives remain defiant.
The furor over the GST dominated question period today.
Why is the Prime Minister continuing to try to ram through the goods and services tax when Canadians know and economists generally agree that it's the wrong tax at the wrong time and will cause serious damage to an economy already in serious difficulties because of the policies of this government? The Calgary Herald.
Fielding questions in the absence of the Prime Minister, Don Mazankowski waved editorials that denounced the Liberal senators.
Mr. McEachen over in the Senate is going to pick and choose as to what pieces of legislation he thinks are appropriate for the Canadian people, or whether those decisions are going to be made here on the floor of the House of Commons.
Then NDP leader Audrey McLaughlin argued that the appointments may be illegal. There are not supposed to be more senators from a province than MPs, and New Brunswick now has 11 senators and only 10 MPs.
There are some very serious questions here about whether this government is violating the Constitution of Canada.
Just admitted it.
And so, Mr. Speaker, I ask the Minister of Justice, rather to operate on maybes, why doesn't this government simply make a reference to the Supreme Court, as was done in 1982, to get a ruling on what is legal about these appointments?
Hear, hear.
All of the parties, with respect to the decision to appoint the 8 senators, had independent legal advice, and all of that legal advice strongly supported the view that the government was right to do this. That it's absolutely the case. In fact, the government must do this.
The attention will shift from the House of Commons to the Senate early next week. On Tuesday, the Speaker of the Senate and the Tory senators with their newly appointed troops will take their seats. But that may be as far as it goes because the Liberals haven't decided whether they'll show up or continue their boycott of the Senate. Julie Van Dusen, CBC News, Ottawa.
While uncertainty continues over the fate of the tax, some companies have already started collecting it, and that's made consumers angry and confused. Carrie Schipper reports.
Donald McDonald has to fork out almost $25 more for his YMCA membership in Toronto this year. That's because his membership runs into 1991. So the YMCA is charging him an extra 7% for the goods and services tax.
I am annoyed at having to pay the GST before it's passed by the Senate. I think the government is jumping the gun on this.
But the YMCA says the government has given it no alternative but to charge the GST, even before it goes into effect.
The legislation as it currently stands requires the GST be collected on any memberships purchased after September 1st, and the Y has a liability to Revenue Canada to pay that GST.
Ray Resendez is a tax specialist at Coopers & Lybrand. He says some companies are charging the GST for more than the 1991 portion.
I don't think it's very, very common, but I do know that it has happened. There's obvious confusion, mass confusion on the part of the business community and consumers with respect to exactly how these so-called transitional rules are supposed to work.
But according to Otto Jelinek, the federal revenue minister, there is no reason for the confusion.
And neither the consumer nor the business must pay or collect or remit to the government of Canada until after January 1st, 1991, whether the law is passed or not.
Yeah, do you have tickets for the regular season?
But businesses like Maple Leaf Gardens say it's not always practical to wait until January 91 to collect the tax.
If we wait till after January 1st, we've already sold tickets for games after January 1, and therefore we will have to pocket up the money if the bill is passed. So we will lose 7%.
Many companies are promising their customers a refund if the GST is not passed, but there's no legal obligation to reimburse people who have prepaid the tax. Carrie Schipper, CBC News, Toronto.
The city of Los Angeles is considering sweeping new rules to get rid of its longtime arch enemy, smog. As David Garcia reports, the only way for Californians to enjoy clean air may be cars that don't guzzle gas.
The goal for the smoggiest city in the nation is the cleanest mass-produced cars in the world, ultra-clean cars and fuels to power them.
We are really making ultra-clean cars, squeaky clean even by today's comparison, 50 to 85% less polluting than today's cars, and they will include some cars that emit no pollution at all because they'll be electric.
The crowd was standing room only as special interest groups made final arguments on the new standards, which will redefine what's considered a clean car. For example, automakers are already strapped with California standards twice as tough as the rest of the country. As for the new regulations, they are supportive, but hedge their bets.
It's nice to have targets. It gets you to working for them. But the flexibility has to be there if things don't work out. You can't schedule invention.
But utility companies, already experimenting with alternative fuel cars such as natural gas, say the sweeping new standards are overdue. And with our fuel dependency on the line in the Middle East, regulatory agencies are saying we can't afford any more lessons.
To the extent that we can diversify our fuel supply and displace it with fuels that are available more locally, we certainly help with some of our international crises and at the same time solve air pollution problems.
David Garcia in Los Angeles for NBC News.
A beautiful day in Cape Breton today. Let's check conditions around our island. At the moment in the Sydney area, under a few clouds, a current reading of 20 degrees. Relative humidity is 68%. The winds from the southwest at 14 kilometers an hour. Barometric pressure is steady at 101.9 kilopascals. The high for the day was 20 degrees. The overnight low was 8. Well, the Maritimes experienced a fair amount of sunshine today. However, fog patches will form tonight with increasing cloud throughout the regions. Scattered showers are forecast tomorrow over most localities as a weak frontal system moves into southern New Brunswick. So the forecast for tonight, increasing cloud, winds light, a low of 8 degrees. Tomorrow will be mainly cloudy with scattered showers, a high of 18. On Sunday, much the same, mostly cloudy with showers, a high of 17. Periods of rain forecast for Monday, a high of 18, and back to the sunshine on Tuesday when it will be 17 degrees. A low tide at 20 minutes to 10 tonight, a high tide at 20 past 4 tomorrow morning. Sunset this evening in about 15 minutes at 6:47. And sunrise tomorrow morning at 5 minutes to 7. And that's the weather. A recent trend in daycare is to integrate special needs children into regular daycares. But some disabled children need more help than an ordinary daycare can offer. The Center for Special Needs Children in Sydney was established for them. Joan Weeks has the story.
This daycare center is the only one of its kind in Cape Breton. It only accepts children with special needs. That can mean anything from cerebral palsy to delayed development or hyperactivity. Every morning, 14 children between the ages of 3 and 7 come here to spend the day.
Good morning, good morning, good morning to you. Good morning, and how do you do? Good morning, Timothy.
It's a small group, but surprisingly, there hasn't been much demand for more spaces. That might be because many parents have no idea that this daycare exists, says board president Malcolm Nemus. Even with the move towards integration, Nemus says this daycare will always be needed.
It's difficult for some of these children to work with large groups in a regular daycare center. So I think, although the move is toward integration, and I agree wholeheartedly with it, I think that the need will always exist for a daycare of this nature.
While other daycare centers might have one teacher for 8 or 10 children, this center has a 1-to-3 ratio. And specialists like Shelley McDougall, who work with the visually impaired, come here regularly. Today, she's helping Brent McLean.
Look, Brent, you can put your head up a little bit.
Brent's mother worked with him at home for years, but Debbie says she never really felt like she was making much progress. He's only been here a month, but already she can see a difference.
At this time, since last year or so, he's picked up an awful lot. But before that, you know, you've been going to doctors and therapists, and you just don't see it. I hadn't been seeing it anyway. They had been, but I hadn't. But I've been seeing it the last year or so now myself.
So how does it feel to see that?
Good. Feels good, yeah. Makes you work a little bit harder.
Good morning, Paula. Good morning.
It takes special people to work with these children. Sometimes it can take months or years to teach little things that many parents take for granted. Things like washing and toilet training. Paula McCrory has been here for 3 years.
A lot of people say, how can you work there? You know, but it's very rewarding when, you know, when you're doing something good for someone else. It's rewarding.
Some of these children come here for 2 or 3 years, so that teachers get pretty attached to them, and their achievements mean a lot.
Sometimes it feels like that your efforts are all in vain, but when you see a little thing like Timothy, he peed in the toilet yesterday, so it was a big reward for us, because from day one we put him on the potty and his parents started it at home. So when the first time he did, we were all excited, so it's a big reward. Like Amanda, when she came, she couldn't walk, so now she's up in the walker and she's talking, and it's very rewarding to see her up and around.
Special needs daycare is subsidized by the Department of Social Services, so even children from low-income families can use it, and all the kids seem to love it here. Do you like coming here to daycare?
Yeah.
What do you like doing best?
Trapeze.
What is it?
Trap. They elephant trap.
You like making elephant crafts?
Yeah.
Yeah? And do you have a nice teacher?
Yeah.
What's her name?
Pastel.
Tasco. And what else do you do here when you're at daycare?
See Taffy.
Sing?
Yeah. I see Taffy.
You see Taffy. Who's Taffy?
She's the teacher.
Going to school or daycare is a big step for any child. Imagine also having to learn to walk or talk at the same time. But these kids take it all in their stride. And with the extra help they get here, most of them are doing just great. At the Daycare Center for Special Needs Children in Sydney, I'm Joan Weeks.
Still to come on Cape Breton Report, Iraq is threatening to attack Israel and the Gulf states. And Yom Kippur is being marked by a modern-day exodus from the Soviet Union.
For a limited time, Kentucky Fried Chicken has reduced its bucket.
Maybe it's just me, but I don't think something this size can hold 15 pieces of chicken. The lid thing doesn't work. I mean, how can I get this home? I'm going to be stranded.
Our 15-piece bucket is now reduced, in price only.
Maybe they expect me to eat some of it here before I go home. Is that it?
Get your $13.99 bucket today.
Kurt Becker, married, 2 children. I've been his agent at the Mutual Group for 8 years.
2 children?
Well, just had twins.
Well, that changes things.
Now he's looking for more protection.
Well, how about adding some term insurance?
Change some GICs to an RESP for education.
He's still looking for investment and growth.
Well, then he should hold on to his mutual funds.
Makes sense.
That's one approach. Now, what else can we show him?
The Mutual Group and you, facing tomorrow together.
Sometimes it's just no fun out there. With stores that promise low-end prices that aren't so low when you get there. That's why Guardian has help. Householders' everyday low prices. Lower prices on items you shop for most.
Like diapers, baby powder, and lots more.
And you still get Guardian's quality service and advice. Help, it's right around the corner at your local Guardian drugstore.
How do you select a great restaurant? Atmosphere, of course. I want to feel welcome.
Good food, plenty of it, at a reasonable price.
Service is what matters to me. Nice people who know what they're doing.
Quality service, quality food, and fabulous daily specials. That's Jasper's Family Restaurant with 3 locations to serve you.
How does Jasper's measure up? Splendid.
Magnificent.
Perfection.
Conciliation talks between striking hospital workers and the Hospital Association will resume this weekend. CBRT and GW spokesman Victor Tomacek says the 2 sides will resume negotiations on Sunday morning in Sydney. 1,000 CNAs, technologists, and general workers have been on strike at 9 Cape Breton hospitals for almost 8 weeks. In the Persian Gulf, Iraq is warning that it will carry the battle to many places if war breaks out in the region. And it's repeating threats to attack Israel, the Gulf states, and Arab countries which are backing the United States in the crisis. As Iraq's war of words continues, Western embassies in Baghdad remain an uncertain sanctuary for their citizens. Betsy Aaron of CBS News reports.
50 British civilians are calling the British embassy in Baghdad home because the Iraqis won't let them out of the country. More than 20 Americans are in the same boat, camping out at the American embassy. Acting U.S. Ambassador Joe Wilson.
Our biggest concern here at the embassy remains that part of the problem, getting American citizens who want to leave the right to leave.
All the guests can leave at one moment when Bush and the United States say that they not attack Iraq.
At his news conference last night, Iraq's information minister tried to clear up what he called misconceptions, what others called threats. No, diplomats won't be killed for providing housing to their own civilians. No, foreigners will not have to import their own food, contrary to earlier reports. Yes, diplomats will be able to shop with ration tickets. There are food shortages here, and there is rationing of the staples, among them bread, sugar, and rice.
That combination of shortages of some staples and increase in the prices suggests to us that that the sanctions are biting.
The Iraqis are convinced those in the West just don't understand them.
And sometimes we feel that we are mistreated by the West. احنا ليس أعداء للشعوب. We are not hostile and we are not enemies.
Two peoples talking at each other in a very dangerous part of the world. Betsy Aaron, CBS News, Baghdad.
Yom Kippur begins tonight at sundown. It's the Day of Atonement, the holiest day in the Jewish calendar. In the Soviet Union, it's being marked by a modern-day exodus. Jim Maceda of NBC News reports from Moscow.
Are streaming out of the Soviet Union, and most of them are Jews. Lines of Jews seeking exit visas to Israel and the United States are growing. Discrimination is often the cause.
There is also a fear, not only about anti-Semitism, but the fear for the future of this country.
The Soviet government is beginning to take the exodus seriously. Articles warn of a brain drain if Jews and other educated ethnic groups continue to leave in mass.
A country losing its minds cannot gain a lot of respect abroad.
Glasnost opened borders for Jews wanting to emigrate. And a new law allows Jews to freely express their faith and teach their religion. But Jewish leaders say that's not enough, as long as Jews and others are stripped of citizenship when they leave the Soviet Union for another country. The parliament is debating a law which would give Jewish emigrants the right to freely return. Most agree a liberal law on entry and exit would help. But unless Jews feel a part of real reforms in the Soviet Union, the brain drain is likely to get only worse. Jim Maceda, NBC News, Moscow.
For those considering a Toyota Camry, some revealing news. There's another 5-passenger sedan with front-wheel drive, fuel-injected engine, roomier trunk, and it's over $2,700 less than the Toyota Camry. In fact, this German-engineered 1990 Volkswagen Jetta costs less than last year and has more features. So stop tearing your hair out about new car prices. Relax, Atlantic Canada. It's time to think about Volkswagen again.
I can't remember when I got my first Canada Savings Bond. But when I joined the working world, I started buying them all on my own. Sure came in handy when it came to going to college. And then, helping us with our first house. And now, it looks like I've got one more good reason to save.
The investment you can always count on. Safe, secure, cashable Canada Savings Bonds. On sale October 18th to November 1st.
Imagine visiting yourself in the future.
Hi.
Hi.
You're me.
Mm-hmm.
We're us.
25 years later.
How are we?
Fine.
We living down here?
Winters, yeah.
How can we afford it?
Freedom 55.
Freedom 55.
Protection today, plus a financial program that works, so one day you won't have to. Freedom 55. Talk to a London Life representative. That'll be for you.
There's
There's an irresistible magic in the sounds of Nova Scotia. The adventure of its history. The energy of its music. And the romance of the sea. All bid you to come and listen. This year, see the sounds of Nova Scotia.
Lionel's mother just invited herself for dinner tonight. I think it's a test. She wants to see how I feed her son when I don't get 2 weeks' notice.
Ex-cuisine fettuccine Alfredo. Plump, tender noodles nestled in a delicately creamy sauce. No matter what you're having for dinner, it's the perfect dinner companion.
She had to admit the dinner was perfect. I'd say Lionel outdid himself.
Ex-cuisine side dishes from Uncle Ben's. The perfect dinner companion.
The disabled are becoming more assertive. They're taking charge of their lives and demanding their rightful place in society. A three-day conference began in North Sydney today to help organizations of the disabled develop leadership. Paul Young is the president of People First, and Raleigh Orr is the chairman of the Coalition of Provincial Organizations of the Handicapped. I spoke with him this afternoon. Begin with you. What is the objective of a leadership conference? What do you try to do at such a conference?
Jack, what we're trying to do at this Atlantic Leadership Conference is to teach developmentally handicapped people how to run an organization, how to conduct meetings, how to meet the different politicians or agencies that they might have to deal with concerning their issues.
Mm-hmm. And how do you go about doing that?
We set up different workshops in Pacific, dealing with Pacifics, such as a workshop that I will be doing tomorrow is how to keep an active group, and in there's different ways of dealing with the issues, making yourself visible to the public, and just learning how to express your concerns to the politicians and the public.
Mr. Orr, is this an example of how developmentally disabled people are doing more things for themselves, getting their causes to the fore so that the public can understand just what they're facing?
Yes, I would say so, Jack. And the organization which I chair, the COPO, is cross disability in nature, though I am learning a lot from this conference. I think perhaps the biggest thing I'm learning is that developmentally handicapped people can indeed speak for themselves, and this is a misconception in the public that they cannot do so, and it's quite obvious that they can and should do so.
When you say cross-developmentally disabled, what exactly is that?
I mean all types of disabilities, whether it's mobility disabled, blind and visually impaired, deaf and hearing impaired, and hidden disabilities, and in the case of today's conference, the mentally disabled or developmentally handicapped.
We've seen great strides in recent years in improvements for the developmentally disabled. What is left to do?
There is a great deal left to do, as I just indicated. They need to have the right to speak for themselves. They are best qualified to know what is good for them. An able-bodied person cannot tell a mentally disabled person what is good for them. Not in the same manner that a mentally handicapped person can. That is one of the many things left to do.
Okay, Paul Young and Raleigh Orr, thank you both, and good luck with the conference.
Thank you, Jack.
You're quite welcome, Jack.
Well, Roy Mercer of CBC Sports is standing by outside under the big top, and he's got the sports. Roy?
That's right, Jack. Indeed, I'm under the big top, and coming up next, we're going to take a look at the American League East and how tight that race is between the Red Sox and the Toronto Blue Jays. That's right after this.
More drivers choose Canadian Tire for auto service than any place else. In fact, without us, some say there'd be nobody on the road. But that's a little hard to believe. Canadian Tire, Canada's #1 choice for auto service. More people are going to Canadian Tire for brake service than any place else. So if you're not, what's stopping you? Canadian Tire, Canada's #1 choice for brakes.
see the world in a certain way, as the golden glow of the morning sun ripening our vines, through the generations of experience and care of our winemakers, and in the golden moments you spend enjoying the company of family and friends and the elegant taste of Domaine d'Or. Delightfully dry, wonderfully balanced Domaine d'Or, created for you and your golden moments.
The 91s are in at your Atlantic Ford Mercury dealers, and this is your last chance. The remaining 1990s must go. To move them out, we're cutting prices even lower, staying open extra hours, whatever is needed to make the right deal for you. Check your local paper for your dealer's special hours. Come in and look for marked down Wise Buy prices. This is your last chance. When the 90s are gone, they're gone, and the 1990 prices are gone. See your Atlantic Ford Mercury dealer now. The Wise Buy Savings Marathon ends soon.
Gonorrhea, herpes, chlamydia, sexually transmitted diseases. Activities that expose you to these diseases can also expose you to the AIDS virus. Share a needle, and you also risk getting AIDS. You can't tell by looking that a person has the AIDS virus.
How was I supposed to know?
There is no cure for AIDS.
Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to our open house here at Cape Breton Report. And we're going to talk about the American League East in baseball, and that race couldn't get any closer because now the Toronto Blue Jays and the Boston Red Sox are dead even. Last night, the Boss Sox beat the Detroit Tigers by a score of 3-2. The good news for the Detroit Tigers, Cecil Fielder clubbed his 49th homer of the season. Now it's that three-game matchup that we all been waiting for at Fenway Park, and going to the mound for the Boston Red Sox will be Mike Boddicker. He'll be up against Dave Steve for the Toronto Blue Jays. Let's take a look at the highlights of that game last night between the Red Sox and the Tigers.
The Red Sox finally get to left-hander Steve Searcy of the Tigers in the fourth. Bases loaded. Mike Greenwell doubles down the right field line. That brings in Carlos Quintana. He's followed by Dwight Evans, and the Red Sox break on top 2-0. Same inning, Tom Brunansky takes a long fly ball to the fence in left center field. T-Bone Shelby goes up and gets it. The sacrifice fly scores Ellis Burks. That makes it 3-0 Boston after 4 innings. Tigers narrow the margin to 3-1. Then in the 8th, Lord Cecil Fielder, the Tigers' big hope on the season, launches home run number 49. I hope Pat Gillick's watching this one go into the upper deck. The Tigers narrow the margin to 3-2, but in comes Jeff Reardon in the 9th. Former Blue Jay Lloyd Mosby can't deliver for his former mates. Reardon gets save number 19. The Red Sox get a 3-2 win over the Tigers.
And for you Red Sox fans that are wondering about Roger Clemens, he will not start tonight. He is supposed to start tomorrow. That'll go against Todd Stottlemyre for the Toronto Blue Jays. Now let's go to the National League East, where the Pittsburgh Pirates held on to their 3-game lead, but it was a close game against the Chicago Cubs. Make the final score 3-2.
First, Cubs are leading 1-0. Andre Dawson with a home run to left field. Nobody moved for that one. We start in the top of the first. Cubs are leading 1-0. Andre Dawson with a home run to left field. Nobody moved for that one. Deep into the seats, and the Cubs led by a score of 2-0. Now to the bottom of the first inning, Bobby Bonilla would get one of those runs back with a single into center field. Wally Backman, who was on base, would come around to score, and that cut the Cubs' lead to 2-1. Now we move on to the bottom of the third. Andy Van Slyke with a base hit to right field that would go for a double. Jay Bell would come around to score from second base, and we were all tied up at 2-2. Now to the bottom of the sixth, it's 2-2. Mike Bilecki is pitching to Sid Bream, and Bream with a base hit the opposite way that would drop in and then would carry into the seats for a ground rule double. Bobby Bonilla would score the game winner. The Pirates go on to down the Cubs 3-2.
All right, now for all you baseball fans and the people here under the big top at CBC Cape Breton, let's take a look at all the action and the scores from yesterday's action in Major League Baseball. it's been a long time, but finally, it's hockey night on Cape Breton Island tonight at Center 200. Their first home exhibition game, the Cape Breton Oilers versus the Fredericton Canadians. That game will start at 7:30. The general manager for the Cape Breton Oilers, Dave Andrews, has this look at some of the newer faces in the lineup tonight.
Well, I think the new players that are going to stand out certainly right away, Francois Leroux, who was #1 draft choice of Edmonton 2 years ago, is going to be very noticeable. He's 6'6" and 230 pounds and a great big young 20-year-old player who I'm sure will have a little difficulty adjusting to the speed of the American League for the first little while, but he's a very talented kid, very physical, great young player, I think a great prospect, and we'll be seeing lots of him this year. Thomas Searson, a player that we've brought in from Czechoslovakia, was drafted by Edmonton. He's 23 years old and has really good speed. We think he's going to score some goals for us. Very creative player, hardworking, so I think they'll enjoy watching him play tonight. And Sean Podine's another player that really has been a surprise at training camp, a late draft pick of Edmonton a year ago. He's from the Minnesota Duluth University, and he's had a great training camp. He's been our top scorer throughout all the scrimmages in Edmonton, and very hard-working player. I think the fans will enjoy him. He's got good size, and he works very, very hard. He's an exciting player to watch.
All right, again, game time at Center 200 tonight is 7:30. I understand there's still some tickets available. Now let's go to Nova Scotia AAA midget hockey action. The Cape Breton Colonels will open their season against the South Shore Mustangs. Game time tomorrow night at the Canada Games Complex is 7:30. They'll play Sunday morning at 10 o'clock at Center 200, and Coach Raymond Boxer George feels this could be his year.
Last year we lost some valuable team members and went away to junior A camps, but this year we had 96 kids come out to camp. We had a lot of talent. We're finally down to 19, and we actually can't wait till we start the season this weekend.
You had some kids that were drafted in the OHA and the Quebec Major Junior who are returning to play with you. That's always optimal for the season.
We're very fortunate in that. We wish them best when they left, but there's no doubt in the back of our minds we'd have loved to have them come back home. We're fortunate enough that they did come back home, and they're going to be a mainstay on our team this year.
Goaltending always a key in the AAA.
Yes, it is, and we lost a real important member last year, Jamie Shea, who went to Detroit to play. And but we're fortunate enough that we got Jimmy Ellsworth from Dominion, and he's going to be our #1 goaltender starting out.
Are you going to be all right this season?
We're going to be very good. We have 3 returning junior A players from the junior A camps on defense, and we have a lot of talent that come up from Bantam and Midget in the area. We feel that we're going to be stronger in depth, 3 solid lines compared to 2 strong lines last year.
All right, that's it for Sports. Don't go away. Jack and I will be back with some big winners right after this.
Don't rub your hair. Moisturize with new Alberto European shampoo.
Don't jeopardize. Moisturize. Don't victimize. Moisturize. Don't compromise. Moisturize. Don't agonize. Moisturize.
Now there's one shampoo that doesn't rob your hair of its natural moisture, so essential to its luster and beauty. Alberto's new European shampoo with the unique moisturizing system, Hydratine.
I love my boyfriend, but I go out with Alberto.
Okay, now please welcome one of the hottest acts in Candyland, M&M's. Everyone loves you guys. Why?
It's the way we're made.
Roll the clip.
That's the delicious milk chocolate that made us famous.
Tasty. Oh, and what a stunt peanut.
I really dive into my work.
Hey, Bar, you with us? Very colorful guy.
Yep, you can take us anywhere.
Now let's have that famous line that's bringing the nation to its feet.
M&M's, the milk chocolate, melt in your mouth, not your hand.
Yeah, this is the one we got to run today.
You read their eyes. The commitment. The passion to win. The people of General Motors are keeping the lights on, working to take GM quality to new levels of excellence, making transmissions, engines, and electrical systems you can count on.
Take it away.
Improving and perfecting Chevrolets, Pontiacs, Oldsmobiles, Buicks, Cadillacs, and GMC truck for new levels of dependability. With 77 models redesigned and engineered, GM is putting quality on the road.
Nova Scotia Community College, working to offer all Nova Scotians an opportunity to upgrade their skills or, when needed, to create a whole new career in traditional trades or in high technology.
A key element of the community college system in Nova Scotia is to ensure that Nova Scotians of all ages are properly prepared for the workplace as we enter the 1990s and indeed into the 21st century.
Nova Scotia Community College.
To be the best you can be.
And this is probably the host for Cape Breton Report in about 2015, something like that. We've had a very successful open house here today at CBC Cape Breton. We've got a lot of people out here in the tent behind the building, and things aren't over yet. And Roy, you've got something to say, too.
Well, Travis is going to be my next sportscaster in another 15 or 16 years. Of course, Jack, it's been very successful here today, and we should thank some people who made this all possible. And coming up in front of your screen are some of the corporate people who sort of helped us out with donuts and things like that. And it's always nice to have such a successful open house. And I thought all day, Information Morning, which I watched on television this morning in Main Street and Radio Noon, just a great time.
It has been great indeed. Travis likes the microphone here. We've got a lot of people here still at CBC Cape Breton. It's been a wonderful day. We've had literally hundreds and hundreds of people coming. And we've got a very pleasant show right now. We're going to get Lee McIntyre, one of the guests here at CBC Cape Breton, to make a draw for 2 stereo dual cassette recorders. Lee, go ahead. You pick 2 names out of there.
Pick my name, Lee.
By the way, CBC people are disqualified. The first winner is J.A. McKinnon, 10 Davis Street, North Sydney.
All right.
J.A. McKinnon. Okay, Lee, very good. Got another one there. And the second winner is So Kim Young, 94 Leaside Drive in Coxie.
All right.
So 2 winners of the Sony stereo cassette decks. Wendy McDonald here of CBC Cape Breton has been showing people around all day long. Wendy, it's been a lot of fun, hasn't it?
We had a great time, Jack. Just great.
And we'll have to do it again maybe next year.
Hope so. We had a lot of fun.
Barring budget cuts. That's all the time we have for Cape Breton Report. Thank you for watching. It's been a delight. And we will be back, of course, Monday at 6 o'clock. Hope you've enjoyed it. We'll see you
Let's have the gang. Say goodbye, gang.
days. Have a pleasant weekend. Good night.
All right. Did you get on television? Come on up. Bring him in. Here.
the 8th return in 3 days.
Jeff, there's nothing wrong with this thing.
Everything else is going great, Jeff. I say we cut our losses.
Look, I bust my butt trying to sell this thing.
Yeah, and as soon as you sell them, they get returned.
It's got to be the instructions. Look at this. Who could figure these out?
Excuse me, the MT&T rep is here.
I forgot about that guy.
Hi, I'm the guy.
Sorry, look, I don't think talking to MT&T can help me right now.
Mind talking to the people who keep returning this new product of ours.
Well, why don't you have them call you?
What?
Yeah, put an 800 number on everything. Packaging, instructions. It's easier for them to call and find out how the thing works than it is to return it.
It makes sense. Long-distance business sense. Getting close to your customers can give you the edge you need. Call us. MT&T.
You're watching CBC Cape Breton.
You take the good, you take the bad, you take them both, and there you have the facts of life. The facts of life. There's a time you gotta go and show you grow, and now you know about the facts of life. The facts of life. When the world never seems to be living up to your dreams, and suddenly you're finding out the facts of life are all about you. It takes a lot to get them right when you're learning the facts of life. Learning the facts of life. Learning the facts of life.
Ocean Spray, cranberry cocktail. In case of boredom, empty glass.
Were involved with my trial. Sincerely yours.
Presenting a turning point in the history of screwdriving, the Black & Decker cordless screwdriver. A screwdriver so powerful it can drive 100 screws on a single charge. Any less, and it wouldn't be the Black & Decker cordless screwdriver. The revolutionary new power ratchet from Black & Decker versus an ordinary ratchet. Black & Decker's power ratchet is faster, easier, and cordless. The ordinary ratchet is, well, cordless. The new power ratchet, only from Black & Decker.
Cheese whiz adds personality. Personality, so many ways to use it every day. For sauces, on nachos, or pour it on tomato soup too. Made with great Canadian cheddar, tangy through and through. Cheese whiz adds personality. Personality, made with great Canadian cheddar. Adds personality.
Hello, I'm Joella Folds. Devco's under pressure to bring down absenteeism at Lingan Mine. Monday on Information Morning, we'll find out what the union plans to do about it. We'll be keeping you informed on what happens at the Rally to Save Via Rail on Sunday, and we'll hear the recollections of two Cape Bretoners who remember the 1929 earthquake. So start your week with us on Information Morning. That's Hal Higgins, Glenn Billaway, and me from 6 to 9 on CBC Cape Breton.
Civic CX hatchback at the Atlantic Honda dealers.
What'd you find out about Epsry?
The son says the old man never left the house for 7 years after the murder. Haven't talked to his daughter yet. Some of the neighbors said they'd see Roy slip out, in and out. Apparently he was getting it on with someone's dog.
He's a one-man band.
Versatile.
So's Trent, I gather.
A minor drug dealer. He thinks he was more, but he's not.
You'd know, Harry.
Yeah. See you tomorrow. Go visit his folks. Thanks. They run a funeral home. They're good people. Apparently Maynard used to stash the stuff in a coffin. Something else is curious. When they did the reinvestigation back in '71, they knew Epsry carried a knife. Pulled a file on him. Got a conviction for carrying a concealed weapon. Mrs. Chan? Yes. Staff Sergeant Wheaton, RCMP Sydney. This is Sergeant Carroll. I guess you know why we're here.
Yes, I do.